Right, Lydia, now you're primarily work around swimming pools, not so
Correct.
much open water, right? So
Yeah.
would you mind sharing with us some of your points of view?
Sure. Well, I just wanted to say that I agreed with Aiden when he said that a lot of, African American people that don't know how to swim. In my high school, there's only 5% that knew how to swim, and all the girls said that they didn't want to get their hair wet. So, I'm like, that's really not, a problem. But for water safety for me, I think it teaches everyone how to be vigilant both in and out of the water. It's there as a security blanket to prevent tragedies from occurring, allowing both the child, the parent, and the lifeguard to have a certain understanding of what to expect when they step inside the pool area. Another way one can be vigilant is like checking your surroundings, seeing if there's margins around the pool areas, shows you how deep the water is, if it's shallow versus how like 9 feet deep, 5 feet deep. It gives you a kind of range of where you can stand and where it's too much for you to handle. Um, and you can find these usually around the perimeter of the pool, or they're posted on the walls around the perimeter of the pool. I'm sorry, I'm just really nervous.
You're doing great.
um,
No need to be nervous. You
yeah.
got this.
So another one is focusing on the rules. The rules are posted in big giant bulletin boards in the middle of the pool that you can usually see, or it can be spoken orally to a lifeguard that is on duty. For
So,
sure. And they tell you if there's any, no splashing, no diving. These things are very important to pay attention to when you go into the water. That's the first thing that you should be looking at, really.
and you've worked in a couple of different pools, and if you haven't worked, you've certainly been swimming in a number of different pools. And
Right.
wouldn't you say that really every pool has its own individual footprint, if you will? They're
Yeah.
all different, right?
All different.
So we
I
need to
mean,
be looking around and
right.
understanding, what is the footprint of this pool?
Right. Because some
Um,
of them might not have the rules on the wall, but have it in an office or in the locker room. So you have to be, just pay attention to your surroundings for sure.
yes. And what I've always found helpful, and as an instructor who teaches mostly in pools, is to look at the side of the pool and look at the
Right.
depth markers, because
Hmm.
I want to know where it starts to pitch
You
down.
know, go
And
a little bit further than you can stand.
yeah, I don't have the visual acuity that some people do have, that when they look in that water, they
Right.
see that slope. I can't see that. So for me, I need the data. So
Right.
I'm always checking to see where I am along the side of the
Hmm.
pool, depending upon who my student is and the height of that student,
Right.
because I love surprises, particularly for my birthday, but I don't like them anywhere near water. And I don't want my students surprised. So that's very important for me. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for that.
You're welcome.
One of the things that I wanted to address is really what's happening around us in terms of climate situation, because uh, it's just becoming our world is becoming so much more watery since Superstorm Sandy, which was what, 2012. Wow, 2012. We're almost amazing. But I'm seeing our water levels rising anywhere from an inch to an inch and a half a year. I'm seeing our storms intensifying, so they're getting stronger. They're also becoming more of them. And you may remember that last year we had so many tropical storms and hurricanes that we needed to go into the Greek alphabet to continue to name those storms. But what's decreasing is the actual amount of time between those events. So communities that are on the front end of those storms are really, bearing the brunt of this pummeling that's happening with much less time to recover between each of those incidents, right? And in New York, for example, another thing that I'm noticing is a phenomenon called sunny day flooding. Has anyone heard that expression? sunny day. It has absolutely nothing to do with storm activity, has nothing to do with rainfall. It's because there's a super tide, one of those very, very high tides, and the water comes up even further than it would typically on a high tide, but it has no place to go. So it's got to get up onto the roadways. And so for us in New York, we never had to worry about flooding. That was always the rest of the country that had to worry about that. Well, guess what? Now we have to worry about flooding. So, how do we know if it's safe to cross through that water? How do we know how to navigate that? We've never had to do that before, right? So even we're affected by things of that nature as well. And then just in construction, what's going on with our waterfront? So many more waterfront areas are being developed now, not only in New York City, but in every municipality. And that's great in some ways because it's opening up open water settings to people who never had that available to them. However, do people understand what is the nature, the condition, and the dangers of that particular body of water? And do they have the swimming skills? And I'm afraid that for most of the populations of our cities, more people do not know either the nature, conditions, or dangers of the water, and they don't have the skills. And so that is a deadly combination, which is going to drive our drowning rates and water-based accident rates up. So in that frame of reference, Lydia, would you think about, has climate change affected how you conduct your business?
Well, usually when I do outdoor pools, it does affect it, usually when it rains, because when it rains, usually thunder, lightning, and we want to get everyone out of the pool as fast as possible before any tragedy happens. But when that happens, people like to start running on the decks, and it's very slippery, so it's hard to control everyone in a panic motion rather than everyone doing it simultaneously. Out I don't know, I will only usually work in indoor pools. I'm not frequent about the outdoors or the beaches because those are not for me.
Well,
But
certainly,
it can definitely affect different water patterns such as storms, and could create waves and tides that some people think they can handle, and then it can be too much. Lifeguards can't save you in time when they have to run into the water from so far away, and you're trying to catch a wave or certain things like that.
And lightning travels through water.
Correct. Yes, it does.
So you can really get injured, significantly injured. Thank you, Lydia. Lita, how about you?
Storms, as we all know, are more perilous. They're raising the risks. They're raising insurance costs. They're pricing homeowners out of the lifestyle they love. If you can't get insurance or you can't afford the house, you're not going to be looking for a house with a dock and a boat. The rain that lasts for days and days and days, we used to have periods of rain, but we can sometimes have 4 or 5, 6 days in a row of rain or potential rainy conditions. If people aren't going to be able to use a boat for a good portion of a very short season, they may not make the investment. Villages and towns that have coastal setups that rely on boaters. 2 examples on Long Island would be Freeport and Port Jefferson. If they're not seeing boat traffic because people can't afford boats or insure boats or they're flooding, that's going to create financial havoc. There are marinas that won't make it through another storm cycle or 2. It only takes one big hurricane, a couple of hurricanes, and we're going to have some marinas that suffer damage that will be so costly. I'm afraid what they're going to do is sell, and they'll sell to developers who will then right onto the land. On the opposite end, we've got drought, and it plays havoc with rivers, inland lakes, both the man-made kind and the natural ones. I saw a statistic that some shorelines have receded 50% in California, Arizona, and New Mexico. Wow. If you have a facility on the shoreline, you're high and dry, your economic impact is going to affect everybody. So 50% erosion in the shoreline is a scary thought.
Absolutely. You know, we used to joke as a kid, oh, California will fall off, you know, just disappear from the United States. But, you know, maybe it's not so much of a joke as we look at that now, right? It is really very scary. Aiden, how about you?
Oh, what we do is basic surf lesson. We're doing it outside. You can't teach surfing in a pool. So we are at the mercy of Mother Nature. We did this last year, even during COVID. We kept it small with a small group of people that we planned to take out before, and we had about half the weekends we couldn't go out because of the surge. We just had currents that were the rips that were way too strong for beginner surfers. We had swells that were way too big to take them out in. And so that and I see this happening more often. I mean, like I said, I've been in the Rockaways most of my life, and I definitely see a change. On the other end, for our more advanced surfers and for people who are, really proficient surfers, we get these nor'easters all the time. And so you may have one location for, a surf school is based on one particular break, and they do brisk business because it's really good there. Well, one nor'easter comes along, that sandbar moves, it's no good anymore. And this is happening a lot more. I mean, you can see the difference. You're just driving around the Rockaways, like you were talking about sunny day floods, driving around, you see pools of water where you never saw it before, and you don't see it coming. You just see it rising up. You drive by in the morning, then you come back a few hours later, and it's just, it's just water everywhere. So I can see a big difference, particularly in the fall. The swells are crazy. Last fall was just, we missed out, I think, on the last about the last 3 weekends of the surf season with our students, because it was just too big to take them out, and it was just too dangerous to take them out in. And it's happening more and more. So who knows where it's going to go if we don't do something soon.
Well, certainly you can supplement your surfing lessons with water safety lessons when you can't be in the surf itself. So that's one small benefit of that. Rick, how about for you?
Well, being I don't teach swim lessons and I don't do those things, in some sense, climate change doesn't personally affect me, but I live in the Midwest, and let me just say it does affect me. We see ponding in our yards and places that we've never seen ponding before with the heavier rains. Warmer weather in the springtime melts the snow melt along with a lot more rain. But with all that being said, with climate change, I really feel that as we define climate change, most people think it affects the people on the coast. Well, people from the Midwest, we vacation to the coast. So it boils down to the education. I've interviewed thousands of people. Like I said, when you interview the people on the coast, they know the risks. You take people like me from the Midwest and take them to the beaches. It's nice sunny day. We're there for a week, and next thing you know, we're stuck in a riptide where our kids are being sucked out on their rafts. And so climate change affects us all in all different ways. Sure, quick story here, and then I guess we can move on. But up in Michigan, this was about 4 years ago. There was a 2-year-old little girl. They had a heavy snow with an early snow melt with a lot of rain. It was a warm day. She went outside in her little galoshes. She's 2 years old, and most of us know how big a 2-year-old child is. So she goes out and she's playing in a mud puddle, 1.5 inches of water. Have you ever stood in muddy water? And when you move your feet, what happens? It's like a suction. It sucked the little girl in. She lost her balance. She fell forward face first in the water, and she drowned in 1.5 inches of water. This was rain. Again, this was a parent who didn't know. And so when I say climate change doesn't affect me, it does, because I see it. But at the same time, I get all the news reports. I see the deaths. I see this. I reach out. I get involved. I talk. I go to the communities, and it all comes back down to education. People go about their normal business. You know, they feel I can drive my car. If the car floats away, I'll just get out. You know, but you don't know what you're getting out into. It's what you can't see is what
That's
you
right.
where you get in trouble. It's what's below that surface of water. And it doesn't look like, but when the water can move a car, you don't stand a chance. And so that's, you know, and so from that standpoint, you know, it's water safety, it's education, and people just have to be aware. And that word I was looking for was situational awareness. They have to be aware of their situation. They have to be aware of the risks, and they have to have a plan put in place of, if this happens, what do I do? And that goes for climate change. You know, I'm a foster parent. We have foster children. We have all kinds of fire drills. We have stuff here because the state requires us to do that. Go into a home with people that have average children. They don't do that because, you know, they don't have to. Nobody tells them they have to. So there's not an incentive to, you know, do it because they don't believe it will happen to them until it does.
Well, this is it. We all know that bad things can, and in fact do happen to other people until, of course, it happens to ourselves. So this is just the human, you know, our human factor. But just to throw another water safety, or I should say drowning statistic in the mix here, it only takes 2 minutes and 2 inches of water for any of us to drown, not just little children. And this was even in the situation that Rick mentioned, was even less water because, of course, the poor child fell face down. So, yeah. So I'm going to switch the direction a little bit and ask something that I think, you know, might be important to you individually. So Aiden, I'd like you to start, if you would. What would you see as the largest obstacle to the Larrabea Collective's initiative? And what are some of those challenges that you've come across?
Largest obstacles, lack of access in this community to water safety, to pools, and that includes lack of funding. You would think that our elected officials would be, you know, since we're, again, it can happen anywhere, but since we're in a coastal community, for anybody who's not familiar with the Rockaways, you can just Google it and look at it, you know, a map from above about it. It's a little peninsula surrounded just water all over. The years I've lived here, I've seen on different occasions where, you know, the Jamaica Bay is on one side, the Atlantic Ocean's the other side, and it actually meets up. I think I was in high school at one point where people were in rowboats, you know, in the streets, in the middle of the streets. And you would think that our elected officials would, I don't want to say take it more seriously, but see the urgency in having, you know, the funding that we need in K through 12 to have this water safety education. But apparently it's not something at the top of their list right now. Unfortunately, people are going to, you know, keep dying every summer, every fall. It's just going to keep happening. I don't know what it's, you know, what's going to change it. But I mean, that's the biggest thing with me, just lack of access, lack of funding. It's, you know, with surfing particularly, it's a really expensive thing to do. And a lot of people think, hey, you just get a surfboard and you go out there and it's not that simple. I mean, a surfboard alone is expensive. A wetsuit is expensive. Getting the right staff to do something like this, even when you have volunteers, is a huge expense. And there's insurance and liability and everything else that goes along with doing something. So even though, you know, it's something that we offer for free,
Nothing is free.
Nothing is free, right? Nothing is free. But really, just the lack of access. And Shawn, you know, we've spoken about this before. The difficulty I've had in the last few years just trying to get access to pools. I've had to take kids out to Brooklyn and Manhattan and different places off of the peninsula just to get them basic swim lessons, because we just don't have access here. My local high school that I went to, that I attended and, you know, coached football for a number of years, had a pool that I don't know how long that thing's been out of commission. Our local YMCA is just not accessible for the kids in my program. It's when you go and you talk to whoever you need to talk to, you offer to pay, and you still can't get access. So yeah, my biggest thing is just lack of access and funding.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it, Aiden. Lita, how about through your own perspective? What about boaters? Do they need to be really concerned about beach conditions? Talk about algal tides and rip currents. How does that affect a boater?
Absolutely. Those things all affect boaters. And they're aware of it if they read our magazine, they go on our website, our Twitter and things like that, because I'm a 50-50 kind of gal. It's 50% fun and 50% safety. Once in a while, I throw in a picture. But yes, they need to be concerned about a lot of things. I will say to boaters who like to water ski near the shore or like to beach their boat and then go swimming, I will say if the beach is closed from the street side, you can't come from the water side, really. And algal tides, it's just green water. If I traipse through it or my dogs traipse through it, it's not a big deal. Well, you have to warn them that yes, it could be dangerous, not only toxic to the dogs, but you're now taking, you may be taking species that are in one water body, and you may be going home and you may, spread them around. Right. So very important things. And, water safety, boat safety, it's all about, from my perspective, from your other panelists, it's about being in the water and staying safe. From my perspective, it's how do we keep you out of the water? Because if you're not in the water.
Great point. Great point. Thank you.
Sure.
And Rick, what can somebody who teaches water safety and swimming say to you as a dad that would have changed your decision on that specific day to let your daughter go to a publicly lifeguarded pool with the babysitter?
That's a question I've been trying to answer for over 28 years, because you trust people. You trust people to watch your children, and I really believe, instead of there's a stat that's always thrown out in the water safety community that drowning is the leading cause of accidental death to children between the ages of 1 to 5. Go tell that to a parent that has no experience with drowning. They'll look at you and say, "Oh, wow, I didn't know," and then go out and do the things they shouldn't do. It's a stat that for us in the water safety community, that's very alarming. And it has been that way since my daughter drowned. In 1993, there was 1,000 children that drowned that year. There was over 1,600 or 1,200, over 1,200 children that died in an automobile accident. But fast forward to 2017, and only 600 children died in an automobile accident. But in 2017, 1,000 children still drowned. To this day, the numbers. So results are not there. And so from that standpoint, I don't know what we can say to parents like the type of parent I was, because I thought I had it covered. But I think the one thing is it's not so much the stats as when it boils down to it. If that person would have said, well, Mr. Kaufman, you shouldn't send your daughter here. If she's with a babysitter, she's your responsibility. You need to be in the water with her if she cannot swim. End of story. And if you can't do that, she doesn't come. Too many parents use local swimming pools, beaches, things like that as babysitter drop-offs. And I've interviewed many lifeguards that have said that it's just at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, here comes the mom's caravan, just like school, dropping them off. And then somebody comes by and swings by and picks them up in the afternoon, just about the same time to get out of school. And it's the same kids. They buy their season pass and they drop them off, and nobody's supervised, and they're expecting the lifeguards to supervise them. And the lifeguard has a specific duty and a job. That they may babysit your child, but That's not their primary function. And if you distract them from their primary function, watching things, then they can't see, because that's how they didn't see my daughter 8 feet in front of them. And so I don't know what somebody in a water safety community could say to me that would have changed my mind. But I really believe that if they would have just been straight up with me and just said, hey, we can't teach her to swim. So in that case, you need to be here with her and be in the water, because here's why. And then at least that way they would have given me the information for me to make the decision. If I made this decision the same way, I already have enough guilt for the decision that I made that day. I live with it all the time. So, but I think that's where, as a water safety community, we were talking community, such as like New York City is a community, where I live is a community. As a whole, we all have to come together and somehow that answer, begin to answer that question along with the other thousands of questions on each one of us has a specific problem that we need to solve, and we need to answer those questions. And then I think from that point, we will begin to start seeing the results. And with all the other problems that we have in this world, I mean, water safety is not going away. So,
Well, we already see that now with the pandemic, right? People haven't stopped drowning because there's a pandemic going on. But, there's the comment about eyes on the child, at all times when they're anywhere around water. And how many children have been in accidents or lost their lives around water because one parent is thinking the other parent has those eyes on the child. So that lack of communication where something is happening because the other parent is assuming somebody else has gotten it.
right. Let me just sum this up with what you just said there with the eyes on the child. Every parent that I've interviewed that a child has drowned, what it boils down to, nobody was watching the child. Nobody, zero, nada. If there's one or there's 1,000 people, nobody saw the child, because where does drowning take place? It takes place underwater. Doesn't happen above water or on the surface. So if you're not watching in the water, you're not going to see it. So, and parents don't know that, and lifeguards, people that work in water safety, that's a challenge. I'm not a lifeguard. I don't think they get paid enough. I don't think I would do it, but that's a challenge that, they themselves have to do every single day and work around all those issues. So,
and it's not, drowning is a very quiet act, and it is certainly not like we expect it to be from watching television, right, where people are waving and help me. No, what you would see actually is somebody who's tipped back in this position and kind of almost a climbing up the ladder, where everything in their body is trying to push them up to the surface to catch that breath. So it is a very different scenario than what we expect to see. And, talking about maybe expecting, Lydia, I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I want to ask you about the dry drowning here.
Oh,
Let me
okay.
ask you about the dry drowning, because I think that's something that we don't really know a lot about.
Right.
And would you explain, what that is?
So dry drowning is when water enters the lungs from, getting too much air, getting too much water into your lungs underneath the pool, trying to grasp for air or what, or perhaps say, I don't know. The water exacerbates the lungs from filling with fluid. It fills with fluid into your lungs.
Right.
This is called pulmonary edema. It is the second leading cause of accidental death among children. And some certain ways to prevent this is, having a conversation of what water safety is. Again, we go back to being vigilant around the waters, listening to the lifeguards, understanding what they, say or anything. Making sure to wear you wanted to ask me a question?
Just when do you, this takes place often
Right.
hours after the person, the child is coming from the water, whether
Right.
that's the pool or the ocean or whatever. So, what should a parent be looking for? Because oftentimes this happens at night, right? The child's put to bed everybody assumes it's all fine.
hmm So the parents should be looking for, choking. If they're coughing a lot, that's a sign to be looking for. Definitely if they're having like problems with their stomach pain, you should seek care immediately. There's definitely certain ways to look at it.
Some change to the breathing pattern
Yeah.
as well, right? So in other words, parents should be watching their children, even, as they sleep when they're coming home from the pool, because they could just
Mhm.
have taken in too much water and it may not be obvious until
Right.
many hours pass. So that's something we just don't know enough about. So thank you. I know I changed it up on you, Lydia,
I
but
know. It's okay.
it's good timing for it.